145,000 workers at the UAW that are asking for a raise. And you know what? I'm sorry, but like, there's inflation, okay? Inflation is bad. And the reality is their wages haven't kept up with inflation. Now, I don't like unions so much. I don't think they do the best job for their employees. I think they're overly political. I don't like unions. I feel like we can all sort of maybe do a better job ourselves negotiating. But in this particular case, I'm going to just applaud this union for catching the companies completely off guard and really showing the might of what they can do. Because the problem in today's economy is your everyday worker is getting shortchanged. Your everyday worker is not being valued in the way that that worker should. It's a capital versus labor equation, right? Capital, those with the investment, those that are pouring money into the stock, they're being rewarded. But the actual workers themselves doing the labor, they're not being properly compensated or valued. So while you have the CEO making $30 million as Mary Barra is, guess what? They're lucky to make $30 an hour. The top wage is $32 an hour. Most people are making 18 to 23 right now in the auto sector at GM, Ford, Stellantis, which runs Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler. I mean, this is a problem. And you know what? This is definitely a political headache for sure, for none other than the president who calls himself the most pro-union ever, right? This is self-declared pro-union guy, Joe Biden. He's not doing much for those unions, if you ask me. Listen to him.
You know, there are a lot of politicians in this country who don't know how to say the word union. They talk about labor. They don't say union. It's union. I'm one of them. I'm proud to say union. I'm proud to be the most pro-union president, according to the experts about in American history. And by the way, I make no bones about that. Folks, in this Labor Day, let me tell you what we're celebrating. We're celebrating jobs, good-paying jobs, jobs you can raise a family on, union jobs.
Okay, reality check. You may want to celebrate jobs, good-paying jobs, Joe Biden. You may think you're like the union king. But let me tell you, in your economy, under Bidenomics, union workers are some of the people that are losing out the most. Because Bidenflation is costing everyone. Apples to apples, we are up 16% from the time this guy took office, all right? That's the reality check. Have wages gone up? No. They're not getting increases in wages. The CEOs are getting 40% increases in their wages. So the workers are coming forward and they're saying, hey, you know what? We want like 40% in 4 years. Now they've lowered that to 36% in their negotiations over the next 4 years. Hey, I mean, when inflation is going up like it has been at one point, up nearly double digits in terms of consumer prices, 9.6% was where we topped out. Now we're up 3.5%. But you think about how this like stacks, right? Like it's like we're up here, and then like even if it falls, you're still up from where you were before. That's why I say, hey, up 16% in just the last 2 years. So it's not unreasonable for them to want a 40% raise over the next 4 years, because the train has left the station, and I don't think they're going to get this thing under control at all in terms of inflation. So it is right for them to ask for this. And look, I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't like unions. I've been in unions. One of my first reporting gigs out in San Francisco, we had to be part of a union newsroom, and I actually was the only non-union person. They made me pay union wages anyway. And anyway, the whole thing was like, I'm not going to bore you with the details, but the point is, I noticed that the wages in San Francisco for reporters were not as high as other markets, because while the union was negotiating your wages, right? You came in first-year reporter, this is what you got. And that's not really ideal. But if the wages could be at least keeping up with inflation and affording people an opportunity to raise a family and have a nice life, then maybe you say, okay, well, you know, maybe it's worth it to pay the union dues. But they haven't done that. I mean, you think about how these workers have gotten shortchanged. I think about the years, you know, following 2008, and it was like, you have to take this deal or else. all of those workers that made sacrifices in '08, they're still not making any more money. There was one example. This was pretty egregious of some workers out in the Midwest at one of these plants, and they were making $15 15 years ago. And they're still making $15 an hour today. I mean, wow. So everything else is going up in price, but they're not making any more. And your argument is, well, we could send these jobs overseas. All right. But as long as you're going to keep them here, pay people. And you can talk about sending them overseas all you want. I remember looking into this years ago. There's a muffler company. I think it's Teneo maybe, but anyway, muffler company. And they had a plant in the Midwest in the U.S. They had a plant overseas in China. And they were paying the workers in China literally nothing, like, maybe $1 an hour, $1.50 an hour, whereas they had to pay like $28 an hour plus benefits, et cetera, in the U.S. So you would think, oh, which is the most profitable factory? And the surprising answer, it wasn't China. No. It was the Midwestern factory here in the U.S. And the reason was they had such higher productivity because they were a more efficiently run shop than the one over in China, which had to throw out all those mufflers all the time because they weren't making them properly. Now, that doesn't last forever. At some point, China gets its act together and those jobs will be as proficient, those workers will be as proficient as the ones in the U.S. But what do you do in this interim, right? As long as you're making cars in the U.S., as long as you're charging more money, as long as shareholders are making money hand over fist, and the stock price keeps going up and your profits just in the last 6 months, I mean, they've made like $21 billion. You're not going to give any of that back to your workers? You don't think they're important enough? Well, this union is showing you how important they are. They said they could do this for 3 months. This is bad news for Joe because you know what? The auto industry, it accounts for 3% of overall U.S. GDP. So if these guys shut down the factory for a long time, and right now it's just been shut down since midnight on Friday. So 11:59 on Thursday, it went out, and so Friday morning. So they've only been out of production a little while. Like, think of the significant ripple effect of that, given that this industry accounts for such a large percentage of our economy. So Mr. Union here better pull it together.
There are a lot of politicians in this country who don't know how to say the word union. They talk about labor. They don't say union. It's union. I'm one of them. I'm proud to say union. I'm proud to be the most pro-union president, according to the experts in American history.
Oh, my goodness. He's saying he's the most pro-union of any president, according to the experts, in U.S. history. I'm not so sure about that. Because if you were, Joe, you wouldn't be taking another vacation this weekend. You'd be hightailing it out there, and you'd be having discussions, and you'd be listening to the workers, and you'd be trying to find some way to salvage this. You don't send your minions. You do this one yourself. I mean, I guarantee you, if this were Donald Trump, well, I guarantee you this. I think he, for whatever reason, understood and allowed this crisis of the American worker to resonate more with him than Joe Biden does. I mean, Joe Biden talks a good game, right? He's everyday man, whatever. And yet his son is making millions. I digress. But in other words, he's not exactly that everyday guy. Trump, on the other hand, was very proud of not being the everyday guy, right? Very proud of his wealth, and yet ate McDonald's every day and liked, hanging out with the people in ways that I don't know as Biden really necessarily enjoys, or is that connected to? I'm just saying that. I also think that Trump was the first politician in many years to bring forward a lot of these issues that everyday workers in America are really feeling and experiencing. It used to be you could graduate from high school or not graduate from high school in the United States of America, and you could get a job at one of these plants, at one of these factories, and it was enough, right, for you to go to work, have a couple vacations every year. Your wife could stay at home, take care of the kids, and you had 2 cars and you had 2 kids, a dog and a picket fence, right? Like, it was the American dream. I get it. Everybody has like a different version of whatever the American dream is. But the point is, you could, on just sort of pure labor, right? Your work ethic, your ability to show up on time every day and be at that plant, you could take care of a family and save a little for retirement. Those days are gone. These workers aren't earning enough to do that. Now, if they're married, their wife is working as well. So now you get two incomes trying to feed all this, and they're living on credit. So those vacations that they save up for, maybe a lot of this is going on credit. Just look at the rates right now. I mean, savings rates have dwindled. Credit is way up in the US again. So there's something missing. There's something really, really wrong. And that's why Oliver Anthony and his song, I think, resonates so much with people at this particular moment in time. I mean, when you consider now 145,000 people are finding that they may not be in work. The union says they've got money to last them 3 months. They'll pay them $500. It's not as much as they would otherwise get, right? But it's something. It's something. Listen here to another Oliver Anthony piece. This is I Want to Go Home. He did it again, right? Like this is like number 2 in the country Billboard charts. But again, it's a similar theme, I think, of wanting to get back to a time when life was a whole lot more simple. And maybe we'll never fully get back there. Maybe this will accelerate the speed at which we transition to electric vehicles and more stuff goes overseas, etc. Maybe that is in the cards. But for those workers that are caught in between at this moment in time, to not be keeping up with inflation in any way, shape, or form, to not enable them to have, the respect, if you would, for themselves of being able to earn an honest living like this is really messed up. And this is under Biden's leadership and his economic plan. I just say that because I want to remind you all, and we'll get to the song in a second, but I want to remind you that it was prior to COVID, right? During the years of the Trump administration, the economic policy that was put in place actually saw the biggest rise in median incomes for Americans than we had seen in some 50 years. So don't tell me that that was all about helping the rich. It actually didn't. People who live in the Northeast, or California, they didn't benefit from Trump's tax cuts at all. In fact, they got tax hikes because suddenly they couldn't deduct their state taxes. But the middle class actually did a whole lot better. Here he is, Oliver Anthony, singing his number 2 hit song, I Want to Go Home.
Well, if it weren't for my old dogs and the good Lord, they'd have me strung up in the psych ward. 'Cause every day living in this new world is one too many days to me. Son, we're on the brink of the next world war, and I don't think nobody's praying no more. And I ain't saying I know it for sure. I'm just down on my knees begging the Lord, take me home. I wanna go home.
He's a real talent. I mean that, a real, genuine talent. Hey everyone, Trish Regan here. If you enjoyed that clip, please do me the favor of subscribing to the channel. Just hit that little subscribe button right over there. Did I do that right? Not quite, but you know where it is. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so that you get the alerts, and I'll see you back on the show.